Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to our Community Safety and Wellness Task Force meeting. Today is February the 9th, 2022. We're so glad that you're here with us, and for those who will be watching remotely at a later time. I'm Xavier. I'm one of the co-chairs for this committee, and I'll pass it over to our other co-chair, Marcia. Get us started.
Thanks. Well, y'all, as we are entering our first quarter of our mission, I just have to read you a love letter from me. I'm just so grateful for y'all. So if you would just bear with me. But I just really want to express that I want to affirm my deep respect for you, each of you, all of you who are serving on this task force. And thank you for the generous work you're doing to address the needs that violence creates. I've read a lot of reports now, and it's been made clear that violence begets violence, that harm begets harm. It's biblical, and it's also scientific. Last year in Durham, 50 people were killed. Just shy of every week, someone was fatally, violently taken from us. Also last year, 392 people were treated for gunshot wounds in Duke Hospital. Friends, on average, that's at least one person violently injured in Durham every single day. I've also learned that the great majority of our neighbors who caused harm and who were harmed will not receive criminal justice or legal aid. 50% of homicides do not end in an arrest. Less than 20% of residents who are shot and do not die will not receive a legal remedy. They will remain isolated, judged, and left to their own resources to recover. Our task force is so important because we're not asking which law was broken and who do we punish. Instead, we are asking who has been hurt, what is required for healing, healing for those harmed, healing for those who caused harm, healing for those most affected by that harm. I am so grateful for this task force because we are seeking together to answer the central question of this mission. Who has the obligation to address the needs that violence creates? And your service on this task force is proof that it is us. So I just want to let y'all know that I'm looking forward to another righteous 3 months of fulfilling that obligation with you. It is just an honor to be on this mission with you. Thank you for receiving that. And to get started, we're going to do something new. I have just wanted to capture your wisdom. And instead of going around and sharing a value, I invite you to write in the chat a quality that safety requires. What is a quality that safety requires? Because I was telling Xavier, I'm going to print these and I'm going to make wallpaper and surround myself because this is how we do it. Beautiful.
Can you ask the question again for me, please, Marcia?
I would love to. What is the quality that safety requires? And you can put more than one because safety does require lots of qualities.
For those who don't have access to our chat, could you just read some of them out for us? Can you see them, Marcia?
Be happy to. Yes, I'd be happy to. That's brilliant. Here we go. Oh gosh, this is great. Compassion, respect, equity, a sense of control over oneself and surroundings, grace and creativity, resilience, not grit, trust and honesty, a sense of peace in one's surroundings, understanding, collaboration, community, reciprocity, gentleness, patience, space to feel, empathy, trust, belonging, a system that values human dignity over profit. Amen. Love, advocacy, both for self and others. Do we all agree that these are the qualities that make us safe? Just great. These are the qualities that will center our time together. And thank you so much. Xavier, do you have anything to say, or would you like for me to introduce our next speaker? Okay. It is my pleasure to have a new face in town and to welcome, is Anise, did I pronounce that correctly? And okay, Anise Vance, who is the new Assistant Director of the Department of Community Safety for the City of Durham. I wish I knew more about you, but I don't. So please let us know what we need to know, or you would like us to know about you, and welcome. Thank you for bringing the department update for us this meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first, before I even begin saying anything about introducing myself or saying anything about the department, I think it's not only appropriate but necessary to just say thank you to everybody who's here tonight. We, as a department, as a city government, I think, hold values of public service so core to our beings. And as those who work for city government, we're also, compensated for that. Whereas you all are spending your time, your energy here tonight as volunteers. And that is something that is just so inspiring to us, so remarkable. And in particular, this group of people, from what I've heard from Dwayne over the last 6 months and from everything I've heard from Ryan, the director of the department, is just so thoughtful in its work and is so considerate and caring. And I just couldn't be more pleased than to be with you all tonight. So thank you for letting me be a part of this space. And please consider this, anytime I speak anywhere, I just want to let people know, consider this not a one-time thing. This is an invitation to a conversation. If anything I say strikes you as particularly resonant, or you have any questions or concerns, I'm always available. So with that said, Councilmember Caballero, your hand.
No, I was waiting for you to finish.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
go after you.
Okay, cool. With that said, I'll do just a very brief 30-second introduction, because the space obviously is not about me, but I just want you to know who I am. Anise Vance, I'm the Assistant Director at the Community Safety Department. Joined the department in September, but prior to that had been at the City of Durham for 3 years and change with the Technology Solutions Department. I was the Chief Data Officer there and one of the Assistant Directors there. And prior to that was in Boston, Massachusetts, where I worked for the Boston Foundation as Senior Manager of Research in Race and Equity, doing research and consulting work for everyone from the local government there to nonprofits and funders of organizations. Moved down here because Boston is too cold, and my wife and my kids and I wanted to be somewhere that was less cold, and that also just was maybe more comfortable for us as a family. I should beg your forgiveness if my son or daughter walk through the door right now. I just got home, so they haven't seen me, so they might hear my voice and get really excited and just bust right in. So I'm sorry about that if that happens. Okay, on to the meat. The Community Safety Department update on where we're at in regards to a number of things. The first thing is that if you all have not yet had a chance to see the presentation that we delivered to City Council, it's up on our website, on the Community Safety Department website, and gives kind of the full overview of our plans and thinking. We put a lot of time and energy into that presentation. I think Ryan delivered it super well. Shannon and Dwayne were responsible for so much of that shaping and of that content. It really is, and Shereen Robinson as well, who's on our staff. It really is just such a good representation of the work to date, and has been so influenced, honestly, by much of the conversations that you all have let us have with community members at the Safety and Wellness Task Force, the town hall event, and in other moments. So thank you all for your contributions to that, and I'd encourage you to take a look if you haven't. As we outlined in that report, we're moving into a phase of implementation. We still have planning questions, and there will continue to be planning questions that we have, but we are transitioning into a phase of implementation, which involves some staffing up, or considerable amount of staffing up actually. We are in the final stages of hiring an operations administrator, and are hoping to have hired someone actually by the end of this week or next week. We finished our interview process there, and we're really excited about the candidates who we interviewed. And we have posted now for a clinical manager position, and this person would supervise the clinicians that we bring on staff. If I believe Dwayne passed on the flyer for that to the task force, and so please do share that far and wide. We really want to get as strong a candidate pool as possible. We've had it up for about a week and a half. At the end of this week, I'm going to start the process of doing first round interviews, but that posting will remain up, and we're going to continue to interview folks, or excuse me, to review applications until we have a final candidate. We really want to make sure we get that position right, and we also want to move as fast as we can. Soon, in the coming couple of months, we will be hiring for our crisis response teams and beginning that process. That involves a little bit more collaboration with our human resources department, because we're having to create classification structures that previously at the city had not existed. Clinicians, for example, have not been hired directly by the city before. And so we're working with them to try to create those classification structures as quickly as possible, and also on maybe some shorter term solutions that will allow us to post the positions maybe in the next month, 6 months, in a more temporary fashion before those classifications are formally adopted. So that's where we are in terms of our hiring process. Parallel to that, we also have a budget process that's underway at the city, obviously, which started at the beginning of January and will roll for the next few months. And in that budget process, we have requested additional staffing for our pilot programs, and some additional administrative staffing that would help us scale alongside the pilot program. So as an example, I'm sorry, someone. No, I'm sorry, I'm imagining things apparently. So, as an example, in that one of the things that we are, or one of the positions that we requested on the administrative side, just to give you all an example, because I know you're well familiar with the crisis response side, is a business service analyst. And that would be someone who would help us on the very technical end of the various city processes, whether that's liaising with our TS department to get the right software in place for our clinicians, or whether that's navigating through the budget process for us, whether that's helping us with contracts, all of these things that do take a really substantial amount of time, including data analysis, including pulling all of the appropriate data, being our expert and our go-to on our CAD system, et cetera. All of those things do take a substantial amount of time, and so that's an example of one of the administrative positions that we've requested. Another is a quality assurance specialist, and that would be somebody who's very, very well familiar with crisis response programs, and who would work hand in hand with our operations administrator, likely supervised by that person, to do quality assurance audits on an ongoing basis and provide us with sort of best practice and solutions and innovative thinking around those things. So those are just a couple of examples of positions that we have requested in addition to the crisis response pilot staffing. in addition to that, we continue to do our community engagement work, and are really excited about the possibilities of, even strengthening that work through various means as we get more staff, and as we get more practice in that space and are able to do these listening sessions and focus groups more often and more quickly. A final thing that I will note, I know I've spoken for a while here, I've spoken for longer than I anticipated speaking, so I apologize for that. But a final thing that I will note is that, on the operational and planning side of it, there are some things that we are really on the verge of diving into. One area, for example, is what kinds of training do we need to give our, and as anticipated, there's my son. There he is. What kind of training do our crisis response teams need, in addition to what they bring with them? But are we going to be layering on race equity training? Are we going to be layering on various linguistic training? Are they going to have basic ALS sign language training? What kinds of training do they need to work with hand in hand with other public safety departments that may show up on scene that our crisis response clinicians aren't seeing? So we're diving into that bucket of work. We're also about to dive into, with our clinical manager and operations administrator, a bucket of work on the protocols and procedures related to our therapeutic interventions and related to our just logistical practices of when to send calls, when a crisis call clinician would be called in to listen to a call versus take a call, and at what point dispatch would be involved in actual dispatch of an unarmed team. So all of those protocols are really kind of, we're on the verge of beginning to think about those things, in addition to the staffing and hiring. More than plan those things. We've obviously thought about that a bit. So that is where we are. That is where we are currently at. I will mute myself now, and I'll welcome. I don't know what the agenda and time allows, but I will welcome any and all questions, concerns, thoughts.
Councilwoman Javiera.
Thank you, Anise. I just wanted to briefly make a couple of comments. First, I wanted to thank Anise, Dwayne, and everyone at the Community Safety Department for an incredibly powerful and wonderful presentation that was very thorough. I encourage all of you to look through the very dense presentation with the many slides and the appendices if you haven't already. I also wanted to personally thank all of you for the ask that you made of us. I know we were not successful in that ask. I hope you continue to hold your elected leaders accountable and push us in the direction that I know most of Durham wants to go. And the budget process will be extremely important. I will be putting in the chat the process around those, the very important dates that you all should be paying attention to. As with everything, it is all public. It is all open to the public. It will be recorded. So if you're not able to attend, you will be able to find it on the YouTube channel and various other places. But it's a long process. The department asks are just coming in. Then we have 4 rounds of kind of budget retreats, and it will continue with it. I think we have 2 public comment. One is legally required. The other one we do because we want to, and we will not pass the budget until the end of June. So there's a long on-ramp. It is, besides, kind of our rezoning land use stuff, it is the most active part of being a council member as far as policy and governance. And so please stay tuned, please be involved. And thank you again for all of your service to our city. And there's been so somebody's asked, I'm going to take what was said at our work session a few weeks ago around funding for the positions. What I heard and what I heard around there was consensus around is that we are waiting for the department to make its budget asks, that we didn't want to staff up in the middle of the budget because it didn't seem like there was a need. I will be very candid with you all. Council doesn't necessarily get what a department submits. We can ask for it, but it does go through staff and administration first. That's with every single department. It's not just community safety department. That's just the way it works. So the process right now is departments put their initiatives, the requests for extra personnel if they need it, et cetera. It gets vetted by executive level staff. So you're thinking deputy city managers and the city manager, and eventually that gets filtered and given to council. That is how one piece of how the sausage gets made. I will also just share, there have been budget asks from community as late as May. That's how we got eviction diversion. That ask came very late. We found money and we funded it. So again, many months, there's plenty of opportunity, but it pays off to be vigilant. It pays off to pay attention, and it pays off to be unified around your asks.
Thank you for that advice and guidance and information. Any other questions or comments for our new Assistant Director of the Department of Community Safety? No? Well, Anise, welcome. Welcome to the department, and definitely to this task force. We will be in touch.
Marcia,
For sure, and look forward to being a partner. Did Manju have a question?
Yeah, Manju had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Xavier. Manju.
Question was in response to Councilmember Caballero's invitation to increase participation in the budget process, and I was curious in the future when our task force is offering recommendations to City Council. Is there a process by which we can have more of an audience with City Council, like more of a direct conversation where we're able to lay out our full recommendation in front of the public and have more dialogue directly around it? This time we sent it through an email, and we had very limited discussion that actually happened in the public sphere about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, obviously reaching out to individual council members or commissioners, if it's something that, is coming from the county. The school system is involved because they need to be involved from the funding side. It's not probably going to come directly from the school system. It'll come probably through the county. So that applies there as well. So having conversations with us, you can meet with up to 3 council members. You can meet up to 2 county commissioners. That is not quorum. That is perfectly legal. So that's one thing. I think that at some point it will benefit you all to potentially, when you get to maybe a midway point of the task force, ask to get on the work session and actually do a presentation in front of council. And I would encourage you all to do that in front of county commissioners. I think it would be important for us to hear an update on the work that's unfolded, to hear your thoughts. You all have done a lot of, and this is not to diminish the work of other task force or commissions, but we do have certain commissions and task force who prove to be kind of workhorses where people really delve in. This task force is one of those. So I think it would benefit council and commissioners to hear from you all at some point, to give us an update. And I don't think it would benefit us to hear at the end of the work, right? It might be worth doing like a midway check-in and then a kind of, this is what was the end product or whatnot, and recommendations. So those are my suggestions to you all. Obviously, I'm the council liaison. Councilmember Johnson is your alternate. I think Commissioner Burns is your commission liaison. I'm not sure if there's an alternate on the county commission side. But those are my suggestions. Not sure if those are helpful, but I will be putting the budget kind of schedule in the chat so you all have it. It's also on the city website.
Thank you so much. Just want to express gratitude again for the report from Assistant Director Vance. Thank you for all the work that you, Dwayne, Ryan, all the others that are in your department are doing. Really appreciate you being here, sharing with us. Thank you, Councilmember Caballero, for your encouragement for our work. As we move on to the next area, we're hearing reports from our roundtables, and the quietness around all. This is one of the drawbacks of doing virtual meetings. The quietness around this space on my computer does not reflect all of the energy that is going on when these roundtables are meeting. We have some very rousing discussions and a lot of just shared values and love, and I'm sure that'll come through in these reports. So we have we budget about 10 minutes per roundtable to report out what you have going on. We'll do the reports as it is on the agenda, with the violence interruption first, then criminal legal system, then SROs, then crisis response. So we'll start with violence interruption, whoever that spokesperson is.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As always, as I do at our roundtable meetings, thank you for coming out and volunteering your time tonight, because this work is very important and none of us are receiving any compensation for this. This is coming straight from our heart, straight from our souls. And so to kind of lead this into our work, along with heart and soul, one of the things that the VIDE, or Violence Interruption and De-escalation Roundtable, has really been taken into account over the past quarter is emphasizing the social determinants of health and the impact of race and poverty on child and adult well-being in our work moving forward. And so we are seeking to better understand the resources that are currently available in Durham to address racial and economic inequities. And before I move forward with other projects we are looking to embark on in the future, if possible, I would like to pass the mic to Dr. Boone to talk more about this survey that we've been able to create for the roundtable to send out to organizations across Durham to make sure we can increase interconnectivity within these organizations and also collaboration in this approach.
So good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. I've done presentations in this space a couple of times to look at the social determinants of health, adverse experiences, and how trauma and what's happening in the communities in terms of the built community impact violence. And so in order to uplift the power that exists in the community among community organizations that have been doing work for years and years and years, silently perhaps, without the knowledge of some of us, but who give so much to the community without us even knowing who they are. So the survey is developed in order to identify those known and unknown organizations, formal and informal activities, programs, initiatives, how they give to the community. The idea is ultimately to form a pipeline of services. So in what categories along the social determinants of health do we see interactions and interruptions in the negative social determinants of health by organizations that are doing this work? So whether it has to do with economics or health, food insecurity, access to health, violence interruption, prevention, whatever those may be, that's who we need, and that's who we need to know about. We can do things as usual and identify the same people that have been doing them, and that's fine. We need them too. We don't want to dismiss anyone at all, but we want to uplift the power that is in the community. An example that I can give you is 10 community health workers in one organization, 5 in another, 6 in another, several in another, all started working with COVID 2 years ago, and we remained together. And so the Durham Health Hub, for example, are the remaining unfunded, and this is, it just is a fact, organizations that are continuing to do the work because we know it's still needed. Some of these community health workers not only talk about COVID because, you know, COVID comes and goes, but what else do members of the community need? And so they're meeting that need with a different fiscal sponsor. So, or attempting to, looking forward to. So the point is that these individuals trained and equipped to provide services to the community in the communities in which they live are such an asset. I'm sure you know people like that too. And so we have the opportunity, in my opinion, to really disrupt violence by infusing resources within the community that can be identified through the survey. So the survey also has the purpose of not only getting the names and looking at where they fit in the groupings of social determinants of health, but also to create a pipeline. You do this, can we hand people off to you? What kind of training do you need in order to uplift what you're doing or increase capacity of what you're doing? What is it that you need? So that's what it is. And so Together for Resilient Youth at North Carolina Central University are involved in this protocol to address this survey and to assist in terms of gathering information, but compiling it into a report. So that's what it is. And I'm excited about it, and I hope you are too.
Likewise, likewise. And before I go forward, I would disappoint my mother if I did not say Eagle Pride Amplified on the survey initiative. To go forward, some of the other projects we're looking to engage in the future is planning listening sessions with students from Lakeview School, as well as Project Build, youth members of Project Build. Those are projects that we are looking to develop within the next month or so, to hear their experiences in an anonymous fashion, so that they are able to be transparent about their experiences, both at those institutions and with the community in which they live, so that we can provide better resources to make their experiences better. Another thing we are also looking at is we're looking at a program in Duke Hospital Violence Intervention Program. We'll be speaking with them within the next month, as well as we're looking to discuss with Bull City United to get some answers for some questions we still had floating around for a little bit of time. And we're also planning to look at other organizations that are serving people who are in adverse situations, such as Black men, through New Durham. And we're also looking to go attend meetings. I realized there was one today for the Durham Gang Reduction Strategy Committee, as well as we're also looking to provide a more stable focus on organizations that provide support for Black women, as well as Black queer people as well. And so right now we're really just trying to take that more equitable approach in our work, while also remembering to recognize the social determinants of health and the place and impact of race and poverty on child and adult well-being in Durham. And so that is what the violence intervention, or violence interruption, and de-escalation roundtable is looking to work towards. Oh, and Dr. Boone?
Yeah, just one other thing. We're looking at domestic violence. And so just want to mention that.
Thank you so much for sharing the depth of your work. You mentioned a number of things that reminded me of something I neglected to say before we all started this section. You talked about some of the intersections between some of the different determinants. There are places in these reports where your work may intersect with their work or another roundtable. So we want you to kind of flag those as well for the other roundtables, and think about places where, and I've said this before, I want to keep saying it because I don't know how much has happened yet, but if there's some areas where members of roundtables can work together on the same area, just kind of flag that, think about it. We talked about it some in today's meeting with the crisis response, for instance. So just keep in mind as we're listening actively to each other, there may be some spaces where there could be some collaboration, and so that we're not, again, duplicating efforts as has been said in this space before. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the criminal legal system.
I guess that's me, and Muffin will let me know if I leave anything out. Toya is not with us, so she can't contribute to this. I'll focus on, and this is all in our third quarterly report, kind of where we are, the topical areas we continue to narrow our focus since we had such a big wide target, and then what our work plan is for those getting through those through December. So as in this coming December. This past December, we decided to focus our attention on 5 main areas from among the several we've been studying so far. And as Xavier was alluded to, many of these have overlap with work that I think other roundtables have and will be doing. One of our topic areas is pre and post arrest diversion, especially for trying to do as much as we can to increase the options for pre-arrest diversion, not just how to make the current misdemeanor diversion program function even better, but opportunities for expansion of that program, and post-arrest diversion to expand it beyond the current DA program. That could tap somewhat perhaps into the SROs when it comes to how schools respond to that, and how the sheriff's deputies have currently been referring to not issuing citations or arrests. Our other main topic, which is probably pretty unique to our criminal legal system, is bail and bonds, namely trying to get fewer of those and reduce the amount so that people aren't stuck in the jail for want of a bail or a bond. A third area is family court, and a fourth area is reentry services and programs, and the fifth is victim support, particularly victims of violent crimes where there is no arrest made, and there is no, whether it's homicide or gun violence, and there is no criminal proceeding. And as we know, actually the majority of those cases don't result in arrests or trials. So there's a lot of people who have caused harm and been harmed that if the criminal legal system is the only venue, they're kind of left out. There's certainly overlap there in the initial crisis response by law enforcement and others to those. So opportunities for the work we're doing to improve victim support to dovetail well with what the new department and and what the crisis response roundtable is doing. We'll return to specialty courts later in the year. That'll be mostly adult drug treatment court. We'll decide how much time we need to continue to devote to expanding the mental health court until we see what the Stepping Up Initiative update, which is coming out this month, and its recommendations have covered, which in other words, if the Stepping Up Initiative seems to have the mental health court topic well covered and has the ear of the city and county, which we know they do, then we can focus our attention elsewhere. Our plan is to, and we've already been forging ahead in this month and into next month on diversion, pre and post diversion. Then we'll move on to, and we'll try to spend about 2 months on each of our 5 main topics, a little more on ones that we haven't done any work on, less on ones that we've done a fair bit on. So into next month, into March, we'll focus on diversion, then we'll shift to focus on family court from March until about May. From June to July, we'll be focusing on reentry. We will, or rather come back to that topic, which we've spent a good bit of time on and had some very productive meetings and come up with some preliminary recommendations on. And we'll work specialty courts back in there. And then from August and through September, we'll focus on victim support. And then September through December, we'll focus on bail and bonds, although we may well revise the order of those topics as we go along and take on some sooner rather than later. And our goal is at the end of that 2-month or so process on each topic, we will have created final recommendations to present to the task force for consideration and decision. And then we'll move on to the next topic. So we'll try to get through the process of finishing investigation, coming up with focused, specific recommendations to be voted on before we move on, more or less to the next topic. We've come up with a number of initial recommendations. All these are included in the third quarterly report. One result is relating to expanding the use of the current misdemeanor diversion program by local law enforcement, making it standing policy, official policy, that all of their officers, deputies will, instead of citing or arresting for misdemeanors, and with the current parameters of the misdemeanor diversion program, they will make better use of that, and because it's an underutilized resource. And then that's a more specific recommendation and we've already reached out to the heads of all the local law enforcement, not just sheriff and DPD, to see if they have such an order, and if they don't, if they're willing to adopt one. And then we'll move on to ways to expand pre-arrest diversion beyond its current parameters and expand post-arrest diversion beyond its current parameters. We have a preliminary recommendation to allow the Office of Pretrial Services earlier and more thorough access to arrested individuals before and during their, from the magistrate appearance through first appearance. We need to continue to develop that more beyond its preliminary. We've got some recommendations for the courts, not specifically for the city or county, but recommendations for the district court and superior court about things for judges and training and whatnot. That's more of a, that they're not funded by the city or county. So those are more recommendations for them. We have a host of recommendations relating to victim support that we've already shared with Ryan and the department with the crisis response roundtable. So I won't go into detail on those. And as I said, a number of other preliminary recommendations relating to some of our other topics, including bail and bonds, that are included in the third quarterly report, and that obviously will flesh out a great deal more as we come to them. Muffin, anything to add before we address Jennifer's question?
No, I think you got it. Yeah.
Jennifer?
Yeah, so I apologize. I have not been part of any of these conversations. I'm not a part of this roundtable, and I'm at risk of speaking out of turn. And if I am doing so, I welcome that feedback and apologize. I want to mention that the law enforcement assisted diversion, also called pre-arrest diversion, is no longer an endorsed strategy by the National Lead Bureau. Seattle Lead, which initiated law enforcement assisted diversion, came up with the entire program, is no longer endorsing pre-arrest diversion as an intervention. They have both wholeheartedly and full-throated abandoned that particular approach. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in that we do need officers who feel that they have no choice due to policy and law to arrest or transport someone off scene, to jail is often the only place they have to take them. There do need to be alternatives. But in general, the push now is to dramatically decenter law enforcement from those particular discourses. Manju asked for some links. So the National Lead Bureau, if you go to their website, I just popped it in the chat, they have a landing window that pops up that specifically indicates their efforts to decenter law enforcement. In fact, Brandon Cox is the former chief of the Albany, New York Police Department, who is the law enforcement liaison, director of police activity for the National Lead Bureau, has been very, very outspoken about this. And in general, they only endorse pre-arrest diversion as a program that sits with and is owned by law enforcement as a harm reduction strategy in communities whose, to be perfectly frank, politics are so broken and regressive that is the only harm reduction strategy that can possibly be implemented to reduce contact with criminal justice systems, which I think is not us. Like the fact that we're on this Zoom call means that that's not us, right? And then also the Seattle Lead program, which I wanted to share, too many links open. If you go to their About page, they actually have implemented this. So the Seattle Lead program works very, very closely with the National Lead Bureau in that technical assistance capacity. And if you scroll down, you'll see that they actually have data from going back from 2020, where they have arrest diversion, community referral, and social contact referral to their team. And they've had 2 arrest diversion activities since September 2020. on record. So, I mean, it's just something that's not actually happening anymore. So I would certainly do not, under no circumstances should this be taken as a like abandon the problem of the officer who was like, I have to do something with you. We have to have solutions for that person. But I would really recommend reaching out either to Brandon Cox, or there's actually a number of really, really excellent leaders in the Seattle Lead program who've been very, very outspoken about what they're doing, about sort of like why that shift is happening and how they're implementing it in a way that decenters law enforcement in that way. And it's not the same thing as just having alternative crisis things. This is 100% not me saying that this is in some other roundtable's lane. It's really just about whether or not we want to put law enforcement in the causal pathway between humans and the program they need to get to post-arrest, certainly. But I don't know, Brendan will do a better job than I can of explaining that, but I just wanted to draw that to our attention.
And I think it's one of these many examples as we've already encountered where it can be, kind of not either or, but yes, and that we want to especially work with Kelly Andrews, who runs the Misdemeanor Diversion Program, and the various ways of expanding its use, which could well be not simply relying on law enforcement instead of citing or arresting, being the principal referral source. Talk about working with the new department that if a law enforcement somebody responds to a call and misdemeanor diversion seems because obviously it's pre-arrest, so it's instead of a citation for a misdemeanor offense or and it's currently we're just talking about our first baby step was get it better utilized, the current system better utilized by the current referrers who are in place now, which is law enforcement. But you're absolutely, I think that's a great suggestion that we'll want to dig into is other ways to decentralize it, to decenter, as you put it, to get people into that program to be held accountable for what they may have done in the misdemeanor level, and not just first-time offenders, maybe not only misdemeanors, but certain low-level felonies. And we want to start with what's there, improve it, but look at ways to expand it and be creative in doing it. But at the very, and as a starting point, not an end point, to make sure that when law enforcement will continue to respond, that they have a clear standing order that they are not to cite or arrest, and hopefully not just for the limited category of what it is now, but beyond. But absolutely to look for ways that law enforcement doesn't even have to be the sole or even main referrer into those expanded diversion programs. And we've got the Criminal Justice Legal, CJRC has been a vital partner for us in this and in many of our other topics. So they're very much on board and looking forward to working with us to help them expand what they do. And I hope we'll get the same response from law enforcement. We'll see. So far, I've gotten some response. One agency that does it, two of them that do it, one that doesn't have it. And he said, but I really want to learn more about the misdemeanor diversion program and how my officers can make better use of it. So they're willing to talk, which I think is a good start.
I'm thinking it'll be hard not to have the police be like the first point of contact, because 911 is generally the number that people call when something happens. So until you have an alternative to that 911, then they're going to be the first point of contact, because not me personally, but when I say me, if someone was breaking into my home and I wouldn't be able to defer them to a misdemeanor diversion program, because one, I wouldn't know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, because I'm not law enforcement. I went to school, but some people don't know that. So until we can come up with another number other than 911 and have people who can answer those calls and give people an alternative, unfortunately, this is what we got. So I understand that Seattle doesn't want to support that and they want to move in a whole different way. But in Durham, if we can have folks not go to jail because they're hungry, so they steal some food, or because their kids needs clothes, so they steal some clothes. If we can have something other than incarceration for those folks, that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I would love to see happen in my lifetime, even though it may not. That's my dream. That's the pie in the sky. If I can have it, everybody would have any and everything they need. That way we would have less crime, because we all know statistically, if people have what they need, they don't commit crimes because they have everything they need. And crime is a direct action of not having what we need, whether it be food, clothing, housing, medication. I bailed a man out on Thursday, and when I went back today, I'm like, is this an error in the system? Because he's back on my list. And they was like, oh no, he got arrested on Saturday. And I'm like, but you know he's homeless. So why do you keep arresting him for the same thing when you know that this person is homeless, as opposed to trying to take them to a shelter or somewhere else? They want to immediately take them and incarcerate them. And we gotta change that. We got to.
Thank you so much to the roundtable for your hard work, your insights. Mike mentioned a couple times about the third quarter. Of course, because we started in April, our third quarter covers November, December of 2021 and January of 2022. I just checked with Dwayne. Some roundtables have asked for an extension to that. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance not only to talk about what they've done in those 3 months, but to look forward, at least for the next 2 quarters if possible, through December if you can, and kind of plan out how you think your work may look, you know, and that we can put that in that third quarter report as well. So the date I was given was the 25th of this month. For those who haven't quite finished that work, you could again just kind of show us what has gone on in your roundtable from November, December, and then January. And if you can, in your groups, really kind of imagine out and just kind of think out what's going to happen for the next 2 quarters at least. It'll be really amazing to place into the third quarter report. Thank you. That was amazing. We're going to move on to our SRO roundtable.
Dr. Boone had her hand up. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. This may be a process question for Michael Muffin. So I don't know if this has changed or not, but it used to be that someone that entered the misdemeanor diversion program, at the time of arrest, they literally had to ask for the misdemeanor diversion program. And you can imagine what that's like for a frightened young person to have to think to ask. And when I do presentations at high schools, I always say MDP, you know, and think of that first. But so I'm hopeful that that information will get out there, but more so that that will change so that a young person doesn't have to ask for the program. And so thanks.
Yeah, amen to that. And the Jennifer's suggestion, as I said, couldn't be more well timed, because we're next Wednesday gonna talk with Kelly about how we proceed with expansion of the misdemeanor diversion program. And not too long ago, the SUNY Institute did an evaluation of Durham's misdemeanor diversion program, and one of the biggest things they realized was its low referral rate. Not enough people knew about it and knew to ask for it. So that's absolutely something we want to make sure happens. Not just that officers are expected to do it, but they know what the heck it is, and there is better community education about it, so that people know to ask for it up front. And there are ways that other communities have done it, and that to kind of make it almost like an automated system. So the on-duty command staff, someone rolls up and says, I'm going to be issuing a citation or an arrest for someone, then the command staff can all literally say, yes, you may, or no, you won't. Or did you tell them about the misdemeanor diversion program before you issue a citation or issue an arrest? Because as important as post, and we absolutely want to work on post-arrest diversion. But as Kelly's noted, as the defense attorneys, as Muffin's noted, the defense attorneys who are on our roundtable, by the time you get that far, you've got something on your record, you spent too much time in jail. So post-arrest diversion is important, but we want to do as much as we can before it ever even gets there. And making sure people know it's a, and we've been encouraged by one of our members to start using the term rights, not just a program that's there and it's nice, but people have the right to access that program. They shouldn't, it's not dependent upon whether they know about it or whether anybody who, law enforcement or anybody else shows up and decides to issue it. They have a right to access to that program if they're eligible. And we need to be conscious of that so people are aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Burns?
It was really quick. I just want to say off of one, Mike, thank you for the presentation. I came in on the middle of it, but it was very thorough. Wanda, I don't know if it's a requirement anymore. I do want to double check that, but it's interesting because I was talking to the nonprofit Proud program. It's not just our kids in high schools that don't know they can access MVP. We got college students around here that are hungry, that will steal from Walmart, do not know to ask for MVP, and literally will spend their parents up here spending thousands on lawyers, and that option was readily available to them. So like you, we're always telling people, no, MVP, as soon as you get down there before we do it. And then you'll see 1,200 or 1,300 students. I forget what the number was. I'm thinking about maybe last year, you'll see, you know, this person did not have to make the choice between going into some kind of post program. And you, again, I also think there's some training that needs to be done. Maybe not, and that's not for any, I mean, that's across the board, because we do have some folks in our social workers, school resource officers that know off gate, this is a kid. It was a cigarette, it was a beer, give them MVP, like it is not that serious, put them in a program. But that is an issue we have for our college students that they don't even think. So education is really key. That was all I wanted to throw out. Like I looked at the numbers not too long ago, staggering. And it's like Muffin said, it's over food and they're hungry, so.
Thank you for lifting that up as well. And there's a lot of great things in the chat. I would say to the panelists, if you have some insights that you're putting in the chat that aren't directly questions to each other, please make sure you send it to everyone, not just hosts and panelists. We do have others who are joining us as panelists from time to time, and would love to see those insights as well. Okay, so next roundtable.
I can start us off, if that's all right, Alec, Tyler, and Nori. We have done our best to be strategic and thoughtful about our own energies. Every time we've gathered, I think we've just felt the need to name the level of exhaustion that we are all feeling, and that we observe with among DPS staff and youth, and just making sure that our processes are considerate of those dynamics. Alec and I have continued to work on our listening sessions with DPS staff, while Tyler and Nori have taken on youth. So I will leave more of the updates around our youth work to the two of them. I know we had our first listening session in December at Hillside, but I'll let them share more. In terms of our educator listening sessions, we've been able to hear from more than 20 people across the educator listening sessions. We've had 4 total as of yesterday. We had our 4th yesterday. There are a total of 8 recordings. Some of the sessions had multiple recordings because we split people into groups in order to hear from more people within the time. And one of the consistent things that we hear is just that there are need for more adults in the buildings, in order to support educators and staff, in order to support young people. And it felt very much connected to shifts in some of the political decisions across the state in terms of public education and what's being funded and what isn't. There are a lot of campuses that aren't secure, that people can come on site more easily than one would hope for. and then issues with maintenance requests. And what I've heard more is that that's like a state budget issue as opposed to county or school board. So just trying to be mindful of those dynamics. We had initially finished our listening sessions with staff, but decided to focus in on trained helpers that are unarmed, that are at predominantly middle and high schools where SROs are staffed. But we really just tried to hear from folks that are at least in some of these special roles, you know, success coaches, counselors, therapists, interventionists, you name it. So we're still hoping to dive a little bit more deeply. We heard from one person yesterday, and that was a really great session. And I'm hopeful that the folks that had registered but didn't attend will be able to get time with them. So hopefully this month. And moving forward, we want to focus on parents and caregivers in the springtime, and hope to partner with organizations like Village of Wisdom, EPIC. There's a longer list. I know a lot of these organizations are already organizing and engaged around protecting Black and Brown youth. And so just hopeful that we can leverage a lot of that work and connect directly with parents and caregivers who we know very much care about their young people. So yeah, we're still very much in the listening posture, but then also just making sure we take care of one another. I know I've had a false positive COVID case. I know others who have had COVID in their families and their households, and that's, you know, you can imagine it's a full stop. So just trying to take good care. Alec, I don't know if there's anything you want to add. If not, I'll pass it off to Tyler and Nori to share about some of the great work they've been able to do in partnership with young people. Are either of you there?
Yeah, I'm here. And Nori, no, you got it, Nori.
Yeah, so I think the updates are pretty brief. From my understanding, I don't know if folks got sort of the update from what we've sort of been doing. And so as Jesse has mentioned, Tyler and I had a listening session at Hillside. We set up for the young people to lead these listening sessions. And so it was about a small group. Some folks weren't able to make, and we caught folks at the end of the school. And so during that process, we just really, we really heard a lot. One, these young people, they just don't feel safe in general. It's a little like feeling safe. How I want to put this, like having SROs in that space, it's kind of not enough. It's from what I heard, and just sharing stories about even how teachers interact with other students. When it comes to safety, I know a student had shared there is a situation where, you have young people bringing weapons to school, and it's just sort of like overlooked. And so you have this thing where it's like they were feeling really concerned just about being in school every day. And so we recorded that session and, sort of took in some things, how we can improve really. And moving forward, I know Tyler was talking to one of the students, and so they also wanted to redo it again. I invite more young people to be a part of the listening sessions. But we do have one coming up. We had one at the School of City of Medicine, but we wanted to reschedule just because of COVID, and we don't really want to be asking these young people to get on Zoom. I know I'm like, by the end of this week, I am going to be tired of Zoom. And so I just know everyone else is also feeling really just exhausted from, staring at a screen. And so we really want to make sure that this is done in person, but we also want to make sure that the young people are safe, but also we're safe as well. And so we rescheduled during a time where things can calm down a little. And so we have a pre-meeting set up with one of the young people at CMA, and then we'll have an actual listening session. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are some listening sessions that are coming up in March, and one of them being at Jordan. And I can't quite remember the other one, but
Hillside. I think we have Jordan and Hillside.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we just are still very heavy into the process, and we are still, doing, or more so we're looking to just be more intentional about doing more promotion and figuring out who can we talk to, different organizations who are already convening young people, working with other groups of young people who have SROs in their schools. We really want to make sure that we are capturing their voices and just learning how we can better promote all together. And also I did meet with another young person who had been doing this work around SROs and just trying to get a better understanding of what has been said, what's consistently showing up, and comparing that information to what we heard from the Hillside session, and also what we will be hearing, and also just taking that in and forming an idea around all of this. Tyler, if I missed anything, feel free to add.
No, I think you got it. I appreciate it, Nori.
Any questions or comments upon or something they brought up that sparked your interest?
I will just throw in, if you do know of youth who may be interested in hosting at their middle school or high school, you should feel free to email Nori or myself. There's a $125 stipend for youth who actually organize it, and a $25 stipend for youth who attend. So just let us know.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to crisis response roundtable.
All right, so I was asked by our roundtable to speak today. This is going to be brief because we very recently, as it feels like recently, the holidays were a blur, gave a big presentation to y'all on the roundtables and the listening sessions and the town halls that we have been doing. So that's been the vast majority of our activity. Since then, we have been keeping up as closely as possible with things going on in terms of the budget process and with the development of the community safety department's plan for pilots and rolling that out. We have been slowed down in our process of meaningfully engaging with the department due to illness. COVID has happened, and so we're just waiting for everyone to get healthy and get their kids healthy, and all of us be able to join at one time. And so I think everyone who is affected is doing better, for which I'm very, very, very pleased. So briefly, we had some conversations about where we want to take this roundtable, what we want to do with it. And to summarize what those are, we're very, very much interested in process. We think one of the major successes of the work that this roundtable has done has been to get some of those community conversations off the ground, especially because mobile crisis response I feel like we were lucky to have a topic that seems to resonate with almost everyone in town. And so we were able to invite almost everyone in town to those conversations. So we're very interested in making sure that processes stay open to have that kind of community feedback, to make sure that people have ample and rotating opportunities. So online, in person, this neighborhood, that neighborhood, to ask questions, to hear feedback, to raise complaints, to raise praise, and just kind of keep those lines open to have that sort of haptic feedback on what the department and what these pilots are doing. We are very, very interested in working with community members and the Department of Community Safety to define success. That is a political and social judgment, what defines success and what to count as like outcome measures or what we're looking for. You know, what is our goal to increase 911 calls, to decrease 911 calls, to increase diversion, to have more of this, to have less of that, coming up with those decisions. But our goals in the short term and long term, aside from those broad, I think, political and process-oriented purposes that we've set for ourselves, is to do what we can to continue supporting the implementation of unarmed, skilled, and compassionate and culturally appropriate, properly trained, all the adjectives, crisis response teams that are available 24 hours, and to make sure that we know that plans are evolving. And we are still waiting to have a meaningful engagement with the Community Safety Department due to no one's fault. We blame COVID, but we're interested in having an alternative number for Durham residents to request. We know that there's plans to have diversion within the emergency call center. We're looking forward to having that conversation. In the long term, we're also talking about ways in which we can support the assessment of and development of reasonable service options, or I guess rather service capacity within Durham County. We know that when alternative services are open, more need than was previously recorded by the old services appears, right? So like we're not just going to have our number of 911 calls, get the same number of calls and have them divided across different services, right? We're going to have more calls for service because people have more tools to pick up during a wider variety of concerns and problems. So we're hoping to be able to look at, you know, is there sufficient capacity in our social work realm? Is housing something that we need to support? Is there sufficient shelter housing, transitional housing, mental health services, psych ERs, harm reduction housing programs, substance use treatment programs, all of those sorts of things. What we don't want to do is to create a beautiful, streamlined model referral service and have nowhere to refer people to. That's just the best way to make everyone more tired and more angry and more stressed out and worsen things. So we're looking at ways to do that, ways to shift public funding, and these are long-term goals, right? But focusing that public funding on exactly what Muffin was talking about, making sure that people have what they need so that we don't have to be reactionary to folks being the way that they're being when they don't have those things, right? And also really trying to make sure, I appreciate that Manju wrote this down in our notes, because this was something that I brought up that made a really, really big impression on me. This is not, I think, the most mind-blowing observation, but it just stuck with me when someone in one of our town halls said that they felt like marked police vehicles was the only sign of community investment that they had in their neighborhoods. And I would really like to I think all of us would really like to get to a place where that is no longer the case. And, you know, a new swing set at the park is not it. It's like, are there staffed options? Are there things out there? Is there, you know, proactive investment happening in the community beyond police? So that's really what we're looking at now. And we're very, very much looking forward to, I think, rolling up our sleeves and diving into a lot of these logistics with the Community Safety Department starting at our regular meeting next week. And I invite my fellow roundtable members to speak up if there's anything important that I did not mention.
Mike has his hand up.
Jennifer, are you guys assuming / hoping that the shorter term issue of shortage of operators will get solved, you know, so that you'll have the capacity for the calls to get answered and then be directed to the appropriate folk?
Speaking only for myself, that is something that I have looked forward to engaging in conversation with the department about. I know it's been on my mind. It's not something that we have discussed specifically among the roundtable, largely because we're still waiting to have those conversations with the department. I would think so. And anyone else is welcome to share their take as well. Oh, I would mention super briefly because this came onto our radar and it might interest other people as well in the work that we're doing. So if you're not aware, one of the things that I'm also looking forward to discussing with Ryan is this. So it was already part of the proposal, so hopefully it's not a huge surprise to everyone, but the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the sort of like technical assistance arm of the National Department of Justice, was giving out grants for co-response. The Durham Police Department was awarded one of those grants. They're receiving about $500,000 in fiscal year 2021, and based on how grants work, probably about the same amount next year to hire. This is a like super high level brief version of it, but my understanding is just to hire social workers to do co-response with law enforcement. I'm aware that there is already conversation about bringing those individuals to work essentially supported by Durham Police and bring them under the auspices of the Community Safety Department. We don't know all the details. Again, we're looking forward to learning a lot more about it next week. One thing that I did want to mention is that this grant did come with a cost sharing requirement. So sometime many moons ago, when someone wanted to apply for this grant, I imagine that there was negotiation with the city and they're like, hey, if we apply for this thing, it requires a 10% cost sharing. Can you sign on for that? Someone signed on for that. So there's, I think, what was it, Manju, like 50,000 something? It was like a 10% going along with it. So if that comes across your radar and you're wondering what that's about, that's what that's about. Ryan is going to be much better answering questions about that than I am, but I can also help folks navigate this website if you have any questions about that, but I wanted to pop that on folks' radar as well.
Any other questions or comments? We want to thank all the roundtables for their reports. Great work is being done. I appreciate the brilliance and passion that you're bringing to this, the sweat and time that you're putting into it as well. And especially the way you're reaching out into the community, not just to those who are being affected by the policies and the work that we're doing, but also those who are doing the work and trying to get as many voices in this as possible. Those who are looking out into your networks across the nation, thank you for bringing those insights and brilliance in as well. And of course, to those, to our elected officials who sit in 2 and 3 hour meetings on a regular basis, thanks for being connected to us as well, giving us your time and your wisdom. Before we close, I will encourage those of you who have access to the chat to save it. It's a report unto itself. Just a really good insights in the chat. I think I've saved mine like 5 times now. So we'll pass it back over to Marcia to close us out.
Okay. Well, one thing is, can we, Amber, what about the chat and keeping it and sharing it? Can the chat be captured, copied, and put on our website, in the task force where all the other minutes and all of our documents live? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, just put in the chat. I can send out the chat to the group afterwards, and yeah, I can put it on the website.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. One thing that really, thank y'all too, that there was a lot of intersection that Xavier was talking about, that there is overlap. Jennifer, when you talked about if we can, get to folks and get to them to give them care and then not have the services where we've done harm. Same thing for all the work that we're doing in violence interruption. It's all based on being able to have avenues of care. Same in the criminal legal system, the way that, that we are trying to kind of transform that, those institutions is through caring services as well. So I just would like to amplify that one thing that we really need to do is get this information into that Durham services pipeline. So when you talk to people about certain, small, like what Wanda was saying about small organizations, community-based organizations and such, we've got to collect that information. We've got to know who does care, who has capacity for addressing the needs that inequity creates. So fabulous. So, and I just saw a lot in it. I mean, there's connection. I see a connection between violence interruption and also the SROs with the listening sessions that we want to do at Lakeview. We need your help. Thank you so much, Alex, Tyler, for that. That was really a blessing. So anyway, it is so good to be on this task force with you. That's all I gotta say. And in closing, may we go around and just in a word, would you mind
Marcia,
sharing?
Marcia,
Yes, darling.
Before that, Manju is asking you and Xavier if you would please remind the group about what you need from the roundtables in the report.
Would you like to tell us that? What do we need, Dwayne? You want to tell us that? Because isn't it that we have some forms?
Right. So Xavier had sent something about the timelines about the work that we're doing, and I'm not sure if you and Xavier had agreed later to explicitly suggest to roundtables that if they wanted to be more active in any potential recommendations, and I'm not sure if I'm overspeaking here, but I wanted to know if there was any additional requirement for the report.
Not that I know. Xavier, do you have anything to say to that?
And no additional requirement. I think the bulk of the time, it takes time to really plan out the next few months. So I'm sure that would be time consuming as it is. If there's some recommendations that you are thinking of placing in, as Mike mentioned, that's fine. If there's some things that have cost that you may anticipate would have some cost to it, I absolutely encourage you to put those in there as well.
Great. Thank you, Dwayne. Thanks, Xavier. So in closing, in a word, if you could, let's pass it around our square circle. Of what is, in a word, what are you taking from this time together? And I will start and I will say collaboration, and I will pass it to Muffin.
I'm sorry, I don't even know how I got this. I don't even have a mute on my, it's a mess over here on this computer.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying patience. Because I need, and grace, patience.
Love it.
And I, see, what is this? Okay. I will pass it to Jesse.
Thanks, Muffin. I saw Jennifer say ask what the prompt was. The prompt is just what are we taking with us from tonight's time? And I am taking with me another helping of gentleness, both for myself and I offer it to you all. Take extra good care. And I will pass it off to Dr. Wanda.
Collective impact, and I will pass it to Isaac. Thank you, Jesse.
Taking with me all of your strength, and I will pass it to Tyler.
I'm taking with me some of the gems that Jennifer dropped and thinking about how we can include research and creativity in what we're thinking about. So, and I'm gonna pass it to Manju.
Taking a passion for justice and passing it to Shanise. Or passing it to Alec.
I am taking with me transformation. It's cool to see all this work taking shape, as slow as it might be. Thank you. I'll pass it to Isaac.
Isaac went already.
Isaac went already, of course. Who's next?
I'll go.
Thank you.
Gratefulness. And then I'll pass it to Xavier.
clothed in the brilliance that is all around me on the screen, and recognizing that that brilliance represents our full community. Jennifer, have you gone? Pass to Jen.
For me, I think it's dreaming big. The permission, the opportunity, the possibility of dreaming really, really big. Mike, are you in line?
I'll take the cue on the collaboration and the collective wisdom and put a pitch in. If anybody wants to help me work up the template for us to use for our recommendations to maybe have ready to discuss in next month. I know Manju's already weighed in, so if you just let me know and I'll share you the link to the Google stuff and we can work on it collectively there. I'll also put in a pitch, talk about something that overlaps with all of us is restorative justice. And I hope we can find time in a couple of months to devote a meeting to seeing how we can all develop restorative justice more into the proposals we're coming up with, especially so we can have a common understanding of what that term actually means. And if only we had 1 or 2 or 4 experts on this task force who could tell us a lot about that. And I will pass to Shanise.
I am taking away resiliency in the work that we're doing, and I will pass it to, not sure who hasn't gone.
Everybody went already, Shanise. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It has been so good to be together. We will be in touch with each other and see you next month. Every blessing to you. Be safe. Take care. Godspeed.